Who has it better than us? Just when you thought the daily slander of Lamar Jackson was done, with the advent of the Ravens starting this season 0-2, Lamar Jackson gets more of the blame. There is also a couple of changes to the Baltimore Ravens roster that we shall discuss. And we are also going to take a look at the AFC North as it stands right now. But first, Ravens fly, let's fly. So as we begin our Tuesday morning, this is the beginning where teams start to look and focus towards the next game. So right now, this is the time that we are going to put the Los Angeles Raiders loss behind us and focus on the next opponent, which is the Dallas Cowboys. But before we can focus on this opponent, one more again, we have someone slandering Lamar Jackson. Well, I can't say slandering. We'll just say giving his opinion to why the Baltimore Ravens may or may not be as successful as we thought they should have at this point of the season. And that individual being the recently retired Jason Kelce. Last night on Monday Night Football, he said that Lamar Jackson needs to be a little more disciplined at the end of games. Okay, let's take a listen.
The best quarterbacks, the reason they're getting paid that money is because they answer it down the stretch. You look at Pat Mahomes, you look at, Joe Burrow didn't get done this last week, but all of these premier quarterbacks that win lots of Super Bowls, whenever the game's close and you hand it to them and the game's within a score, you know you got a chance. Right now, they got to figure this out for sure.
He stated that the reason that the best quarterbacks in the game are getting paid that type of money is because they have to be better down the stretch. They have to be transcendent and take the games over. Now, to me, 6 in one hand, half a dozen in another. Because if you look at it, I don't remember Trevor Lawrence. I don't remember Jordan Love. I don't remember Justin Herbert being the best in the game. Nor can I recall them being great down the stretch. But I do understand what he's saying. He's saying the quarterbacks make the majority of the money. They are the face of the franchise. They are the reasons that teams get accolades for winning, so they should bear the brunt when losing. But there may be exceptions to that rule when you start talking about certain quarterbacks. And one of those quarterbacks is Lamar Jackson. And if you've seen the first 2 weeks of the season, Lamar Jackson has been the only constant for the Baltimore Ravens. The defense, which this team is known for, where all of the resources are allocated to, has struggled down the stretch. They've had trouble closing out games. They had trouble keeping games close, even to inferior opponents. Middle linebacker Roquan Smith, all-world safety Kyle Hamilton, they are kind of missing in action. They make plays here and there, but we're not getting the production that we are used to from those two players. And on offense, what is there really to talk about? Zay Flowers is doing his thing, but he comes up missing in second halves of games, which he recently liked in a retweet the other day. Derrick Henry, it seems like the Ravens do not know what to do with him. The offensive line is in shambles and the coaching staff is pathetic at best. So Lamar Jackson is the only one out there making these plays. And of course, most people that don't watch the games and run straight to the stat sheet are going to say, Lamar threw an interception in the second half. But the context of that interception was he hit his target right in his hands. The worst place that you can possibly throw to a receiver. Well, that's if you're a Baltimore Ravens receiver. And the interception ensued and the game started to change. So for him to say that Lamar has to be better down the stretch, to me, is laughable. This man is doing everything that he can outside of catching his own passes and running them in for touchdowns. And speaking of doing all that he can, he's doing all this without the help of an offensive coordinator. Now, a lot of you guys praised the hire when John Harbaugh's sister decided to hire Todd Monken as the offensive coordinator. I was like,
here we go again.
This is another guy that is not going to push back against John Harbaugh and do what is best for the team. Do what is best for his quarterback. Now, I do understand that he is probably trying to help clear that narrative that Lamar Jackson is not a pocket passer and is trying to make him one. Understandably, you have to grow as a passer. But what you don't do is take away from the strength of the team. And that's something that Todd Monken is doing. We thought after last season's playoff defeat that Todd Monken would learn his lesson and stick to what the Baltimore Ravens quote-unquote identity is. And once again, we forget to run the ball. After Derrick Henry had that amazing start to the second half, towards the end when the game was on the line, they ran him one time. So that brings into question the growth of Todd Monken. Is he really suitable for the Baltimore Ravens and the success of this team? One thing that has baffled many people is, why is Justice Hill playing more snaps than Derrick Henry? Derrick Henry is the high-priced free agent. He is the 1,000-yard back. He is the bruiser. He is the guy that you use when you get a lead late in games to close the game out with. But for some reason, Todd Monken feels otherwise. Todd Monken feels like, I'm going to show you we're a passing team as well. But that's not what works for this team. We don't have the weapons, nor do we have the protection to keep Lamar in the pocket and have the ability to assess what is going on the field and make the right reads, especially late in games. Because the one thing that other teams do that the Baltimore Ravens don't do is make in-game adjustments. And if you saw what the Raiders did in the second half of that game, they made adjustments. And the Ravens did not. They continued doing what they thought was going to be the right thing, and it led to a defeat. So I know that over the last few days, there has been this fire Harbaugh objective, but we've got to get Todd Monken out of here, or he has to change his ways. He has to evolve. Everyone praised him for his Georgia offense. I've seen none of it. I've seen Lamar Jackson out here playing hero ball week in and week out. We supposedly brought in a Scottie Pippen a la Derrick Henry to help Lamar Jackson out, but through 2 weeks of the season, he is still our leading rusher. And unbeknownst to me before yesterday, he is the leading rusher in the AFC North. And speaking of the AFC North, if we look at the standings, this is not what a lot of us envisioned the division would actually look like after 2 games. After 2 games, the Pittsburgh Steelers lead the division with a 2-0 record with Justin Fields at quarterback. A lot of people thought Russell Wilson was going to come in. There were going to be some growing pains and they may struggle a bit, but Justin Fields has done enough along with that defense to keep the Steelers undefeated and atop of this division. Then right behind them, you have the Cleveland Browns at 1-1. Outside of Deshaun Watson and some injuries, Cleveland has one of the better rosters in the NFL. They just have not been able as a franchise to put it all together and get the wins that this roster truly deserves. And that brings us to the bottom of the barrel. The 2 teams that are scraping the ocean floor with the Baltimore Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals. You have Joe Burrow and you have Lamar Jackson, which are the 2 best quarterbacks in the AFC North without question. There is no arguing. These are the 2 best quarterbacks in this division and possibly 2 out of the 5 best quarterbacks in the NFL. And heading into week 3, both of these teams are winless. Now, granted, both of them fell to the defending champ Kansas City Chiefs, but a lot of people thought that going into week 3, these teams may both be 1-1 fighting for the division. Right now, they are both fighting to get out of last place, and this is something that was not expected. So 2024 to me is the season of change. Is this going to be the year that the changing of the guard comes, where we see a new division champ? Is this the year that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to get over that hump and finally be contenders and not just be relegated to a wild card slot or just have a winning season in general? Deshaun Watson, for a spell of time during his game, played a little bit better. And if he gets things together and Nick Chubb actually comes back healthy, are the Cleveland Browns finally going to win a division title? Because if Baltimore and Cincinnati don't get it together, they can find themselves missing the playoffs altogether. But Cincinnati 2 years ago started the season 0-2 and actually made it to the playoffs. And the Bengals have started the season 0-2 for 3 straight seasons. So this is familiar territory for them that they know how to navigate. For the Baltimore Ravens, we have not seen ineptitude like this since the 2015 season. And this is a time that we need our leadership to come in and guide this team to where we need to go. And lastly, we're going to talk about some moves to the Baltimore Ravens roster. The Baltimore Ravens signed Zaire Mitchell-Patton, a tight end, to their practice squad, and also brought back a familiar name, that being former 3rd round pick in 2017, Chris Wormley. Now, Chris Wormley was a rotational player, nothing special. He went to the Pittsburgh Steelers and he kind of wrecked shop against the Ravens a couple of times, but he did not have that consistency. Now the Ravens are bringing him back into the practice squad to possibly bring himself up to the 53-man roster and be a rotational piece. Now, to me, this is one of the things that I have spoken about before. No matter what goes on with the Baltimore Ravens, no matter what issues they have on offense, they always seem to go out and find more defense. Now, granted, they have let double-digit leads slip over the last few seasons. But do you know the one thing that will help from stop losing those leads? Scoring more points, getting first downs. Bring in someone that can help the offense. Stop going defense, because we've proven time and time again this is not working. But the Ravens are going to continue ravening until they F around and find out. And we find ourselves in an unenviable situation that we cannot get out of. And the last roster move that was made, which was kind of sorta not in the Ravens' control, was former Pro Bowl quarterback Tyler Huntley has been picked up by the Miami Dolphins. With the Dolphins' uncertainty with Tua Tagovailoa, they needed another quarterback to back up Skylar Thompson. I don't know why they decided to get Tyler Huntley. I mean, I know he's from the area, but let's be real about this situation. Pro Bowl nod, that was a joke. And he has shown not to be a winner in Baltimore. Now, he has come in for spells and looked decent, but to have someone come in and kind of try to win you some games, that is not the guy. So that leaves the Ravens with Josh Johnson as their backup quarterback. I know that a lot of people thought Tyler Huntley was going to come back in and be the backup quarterback, but for the first 2 weeks of the season, he just didn't make that move. And the Ravens left him unprotected on the practice squad, so another team came in and scooped him up. And to lead on a good note, we have had no formal updates on Keaton Mitchell and his progress, but Keaton Mitchell did tweet out, it feels good to finally get back to 20 plus miles an hour again, giving the Ravens fans some hope and some insight onto how his rehab is going, and hopefully we can get him back in, because that game-changing speed, if he still has it, is something that the Baltimore Ravens need. We need those explosive players that we can get the ball in the hands of and that can go out and make plays. Someone that Lamar Jackson doesn't have to do everything for. So let's all hope for a speedy recovery for Keaton Mitchell. And also, let's hope that the Ravens come into this game fully prepared for the Dallas Cowboys, because the Ravens did have 10 days to get ready for the Raiders, and we saw what happened then. So, how about them Cowboys? Yeah!
Nah, man, I'm cool.